All right, Greg, we will go ahead and get started this morning. Today, we're talking about something that we've discussed, we've discussed a lot in different episodes, but kind of never really specifically. But today, we're talking about access. Well, two things,
Mhm.
access and boundaries. And why we're talking about this is from some news articles that we've seen where people kind of get things wrong when it comes to sort of
Yeah,
like
they do.
victimization and why people choose certain targets and how they predate on people. And a lot of times these kind of analysis can get into any different type of psychological reasons behind stuff or different ideological reasons and why we do stuff. And we try to break it down simply into what we call access, meaning all criminals, terrorists, insurgents, if they're going to commit a crime, they have to have access to the person, the victim, or the facility, the building, whatever it is, right? They have
So
to they
true.
have to have access, and if they don't have access, they will use different methods to create access. So if I look at it from that criminal sort of perspective, it's like, okay, I got to have access. But then if I look at it from kind of the other side of the coin, that's kind of when the boundaries come in, right? I have to think about it from boundaries. So we're going to be that's basically kind of big picture what we're talking about. Like I said, we've discussed this more on other podcasts, and obviously when we're class training, we talk about you know sophistication and organization levels of a criminal, terrorist, or insurgent, and how to understand that. And then
Yeah.
when I add that in with access, that's how I can see things starting to come together. But we'll sort of kind of keep it within this whole access and boundaries thing today because when we get these things wrong and how we look at different crimes, it really, I know people are just, for the most part, they're trying to understand it, right? They're going,
Hmm.
why would a high school teacher predate on a child? I would never do that. That's insane to me. So there's
You're
some fear,
exactly right.
there's
You are
fear in there.
exactly, yeah,
There's
right.
fear in there. I don't understand it. Why would you do that? And then so someone comes in and tries to give some kind of weird explanation, and then they go, okay, well then the girls basketball coach at every high school in the United States is more likely to be a pedophile. It's like, well, no, that's the wrong
Stop
way to
with the
look at
junk
it.
science,
That's not
right?
how that works. And so what it is it's about access and creating access. And if that's what you're going to do, there's only so many places you can do it. So that this also helps, the way we talk about it helps with understanding the crime, understanding the perpetrator, so that I can actually have some sort of clear takeaways on how to prevent these things, right? If I look at it using this terminology, I'm less likely to get it wrong, and it doesn't limit me to one type of crime, right? I don't just go, okay, this is for catching, human traffickers, or this is for catching bank robbers, or this is for no, it's just understanding how, just understanding human behavior at a general level, right? And so then I can apply it to whatever domain that I'm in a sense. So that's kind of big picture what I'm talking about, but I want to throw it to you to kind of kick things off.
Holy crap, do I have so much written down just in that first couple of moments of intro. First of all, boundaries and access are intrinsically related. So dumb it down and use science. Don't make a bigger problem bigger. Make that bigger problem smaller by stepping back and seeing it in its entirety. What do I mean by that? If we talk about access and we talk about boundaries as being a threshold, a literal doorway between two areas, okay? Why would we have to set that up? Because we're humans and we have to set boundaries for our belongings and for our house and for our work relationships and for our body and for our emotions and for all of our relationships. If not, why? Then we would be like the monkey kingdom,
Yeah.
where the head monkey just bends the other
And
monkey over day long, throwing
yeah.
shit at each other. It would be chaos, Brian. We
And,
have to have those in order
and those change depending on the relationship, right? Depending on
and
the
the
person.
length of a
Yeah.
relationship and whether it's familial and whether it's a first person that we met that day, right? Like if I walked out in the parking lot and I saw you with your foot on my bumper of my car, okay, I would have a different reaction to if I walk out and found a complete stranger doing
Right.
that. So,
Right.
so that's a scope that we have to look through, right? And while we're looking through that scope, we're going to hold other lenses to make it more clear or less clear. Here we're back at the full raptor. So setting boundaries is different when we're talking about our belongings in our house than setting healthy boundaries when we're talking about our bodies and our relationship, right? So they're in the same vein, they're in the same file folder, Brian, they're in the same ice cube tray, right? But now guess what? They're a little bit different, aren't they? And without boundaries, if I allow everyone to have access to me all the time, it's hard for me to remain an individual. It's hard for me to remain independent. It's hard for me to be self-aware. And now, anybody that's met Brian and I or know us for any length of time know that to get to me, you got to get through Brian. But that has nothing to do that I'm standoffish. That has everything to do with Brian is the organization. Brian is highly organized. I'm low organization, low sophistication. So to get access to me, Brian is my filter. And I welcome that, because that fixes a lot of the things that could go wrong in our relationship and our business.
Yeah, well, it makes my life easier.
Of course it does. Of course it does. I don't come to you and dump a bunch of files on your desk and go, by the way, there's magic in there somewhere. Go.
Right.
But I think it's how we have to teach people how to treat us, and a way that people are showing and exposing their level of access and vulnerability daily. And I'll give it to you in a story. Andrew Zimmern is the worst person on the face of the planet. Former like heroin addict. I'm paraphrasing, so it's not exact, and I'm just doing it. You do your own research and come to your own decisions. But the guy, as a chef and as a person that can rate and gauge other chefs, he's a genius. Okay, so I didn't like him a lot, like other chefs that I've run into over my life. You know, we had Chef Week at the ranch, so I meet a lot of these folks, right? So he has a show that I absolutely hate, where he goes and eats the eyeballs of the goat and the testicles of the ram and all that. It's just not my thing. But he has another show, Bizarre Foods, Delicious Destinations, that's the single best show on television. He gives the history behind it, the people behind it, how these things are made and what the historical perspective and why, this in Poland is exactly the same thing as China. He's like us, Brian, in the food realm.
In the food world, I gotcha. Okay.
So if I want to be grossed out, I would access his Bizarre Foods. If I want to be pissed off, I would access his history and say, hey, I don't need to know your fucking history and how it, propelled you to greatness now. And if I want to be turned on and have a great half an hour, I tune in to the Delicious Destinations. What does that mean? That means that there's something for everybody out there, but I have to tune into the frequency, Brian, that I'm searching for. So if I'm a pedophile and I fantasize about young boys kneeling down and opening their mouths in front of me, and folks, this is going to get R-rated fast, okay? I have a limited number of Delicious Destinations to go to. I can't be a librarian and have that situation show up naturally. I can't be a baseball coach and have that show up naturally, but I can certainly be a priest, okay, and be teaching a kid that way. Now, Brian, did I just say that all priests are pedophiles?
No, so
that doesn't hold water.
And that's the issue, is then how we look at it. We go, okay, well, now you're a priest, so you're more likely to be a pedophile. It's like, well, no, that's not how that works. It's just,
but
if I'm
one
going
has to have a relationship to create the other.
Because if I was going to look for that pedophile, I can't. I'll have an easier time finding them where they have access to their victims.
Exactly. So look, I want you alone. And folks, this has nothing to do with the show. I'm finally coming out of the closet and asking Brian for a relationship. No, I want you alone, Brian. And I also want you provocatively dressed, and I want you to completely relax around me. And then I'm going to ply my trade by raping and murdering you. Now, if I tell you that at the Denny's, you get what I'm trying to say?
It's gonna
while
be
we're
hard,
having to make Hamlet, okay? I don't know if that's a thing, but if it is, it's hilarious. You're probably going to say no, okay? No matter how much Rohypnol I put in your breakfast eggs, you're probably going to say no. Now, I come up to gain access with a very highly organized, low sophisticated way. What is that way? I'm a photographer, Brian, And I'll tell you what, you've got the face, man. I could really make some money off of you, and I think you'd be happy with it. So the very first thing we do is I take a couple of pictures of you in the Denny's, then in the parking lot, and I say, hey, do me a favor, come by the studio a little bit later. I
Right.
take a couple there at the studio, and I go, hey, maybe you should wear these boxer shorts and this T-shirt. Okay.
Yeah.
And what we do is we start breaking down those boundaries, and I say, hey, I got this place out in the desert, and we're going to have the yuccas in the background and the mountains in the sky.
Right.
And the next thing you know, I'm strangling you out, and there is no safe word. You get what I'm trying to say? And they never see from, and you're going, well, wait a minute, that sounds very complicated. It's not.
It's not.
It's time. It's
It
time
is.
and distance. If you manipulate the gift of time and distance, you can be a pedophile or a murderer, or
Yeah.
serial killer. How do you do that? You find out what your intended target is. How do I gain access to that intended target? And how do I lower those boundaries, right?
No,
And that's the key, isn't it? I think that's the equation.
yeah, and it was that's the Jared from Subway and Coach Sandusky
Exactly.
playbook right there. Okay, well, how do I access victims? Well, I know. Why don't we have a nonprofit organization that that focuses on disadvantaged youths who don't have mentors in their life, and
Yeah. So,
you see
but
how
let's
that.
parallel that. Hold on,
Yeah.
Brian. Let's parallel that. So I want immediate access, right? So I come up with a we'll measure your kids' underwear and make sure that it's appropriate for them. Okay. And people are going to go immediately skeptical. What are you talking about?
Right.
Why are you going to? Okay. So in other words, if I run down the hallway and grab your kid, I've got very little chance that I'm going to be able to molest that child. And I'm probably only going to be able to do it that one time. Get it? So the idea is, if I want to apply my trade over time, I have to do it a little at a time. And that we all know psychologically is referred to as grooming. So grooming without access is worthless. It's a waste of time. I'm chasing my tail. So Brian, again, these things have to stack up. So what are we telling the savvy parent that's out there, or HR person, or police investigator? We're telling them, look for that access. And if I don't have access, Brian, what am I going to do? I'm going to make access, right?
You're going to create it, and then the you talk about, because you brought up grooming is kind of, that's obviously what we're talking about, and that's another term now that people are just throwing around everywhere. Just like, okay, with it's like, how do you know someone doesn't know what that means? Is because they're constantly saying that word and calling people a groomer.
Exactly.
It's like, wow, it's like same way, no one actually who actually read George Orwell's 1984. You know how you know if they didn't actually read the book? Because they're posting quotes on it, right?
That's so funny.
But what you're getting into with creating access and then grooming behavior, because this will happen for anything. This will happen. That person will then groom other people around them, which will help them gain access or apply their trade or do whatever. And so if the other side of that coin is then boundaries, Greg, then what is, how do I look at it? Okay, so we kind of just laid out what access meant. We gave some examples, but that's really no different than gaining access to a school because you want to attack that school, gaining access to a bank because you want to rob the bank, right? There's steps you have to take in order to gain access. There's only so many days and times you can do that if that's the type of crime you'd commit. So there's
let me be a dick. Yeah, let me be a dick here.
You are.
And yeah, I am. Trust me, folks. And that's a scientific term. And I poke you in the eye only to make you pay more attention, not to try to besmirch your good name. But if you're a security guard, stop trying to be an executive and protection dignitary. Okay, stop trying to be, because what happens is it's okay to be a security guard. It's okay that your job is to secure a physical location. But what happens is we have these moments of grandiose thinking where we think that it's got to be this and it's more complicated, and that this is about the look. If we spend all the time flipping that big tire and doing the ropes, we're going to be strong and hard to kill. But while we're there in the yard doing that, we're not paying attention to our surroundings sometimes. So paying attention to your surroundings is the first key. And I'm not talking just basic situation awareness. I'm talking about, how can I gain access to you without you knowing it? Well, in the military, I made a living off of finding snipers. Why? How does a sniper do that, Brian? A sniper does it with a bullet delivered at long range with a set of optics. So if I was going to investigate snipers, I could do it a number of ways. I could go out and learn everything there is about terminal ballistics or calibers or optics. And you know me, Brian, I don't
Yeah.
know shit about any of
Yeah.
those. Okay. But you know what I do know? I know people. And I know that an ambush is a way that I can gain access to you without ever facing you. Because if I face you, Brian, not only do you know what I look like, but you might kick my
Yeah,
ass.
you might
Okay.
win.
And you might win. So I can't take that chance. So what's the first rule of predating your kid? I have to isolate your kid. And you're going, well, we're going to see that right away. Now,
No,
because I
you
do it
won't.
over stages, I do it a little at a time. First of all, Instagram is isolating somebody. Social media is isolating
You
somebody because it's
can.
just me and
Yeah,
just
you
that
can.
person.
Yep.
And now I isolate you with information. So Brian, I love that movie blank. Galaxy Quest. I saw Galaxy Quest at 2:00 in the morning last night. You've never heard of it, but it was on an MGM free weekend, so I taped it. And the female from Aliens was on it, Sigourney Weaver, and there was a line where she was saying, "All the people ever remember is my boobs." And so you and I are laughing about that now, and I go, "Do you like boobs? Well, do you like females with boobs?" What I do is I have to break that down a little at a time, because if I come at you all at once, you're
Yeah.
going to put your
Yeah, it's
defenses up. What are
right.
those? Those are boundaries. Do you see
Exactly.
how easy it is? So I can't trigger your boundary. Hey, an IED. You know the beauty of an IED? I build that IED in my basement in silence all alone. I choose, which gets me off, where I'm going to put it and when I'm going to put it. But if I put it in the middle of a football field on a
Yeah.
Wednesday at 7 in the morning, I'm probably not going to hurt anybody. So what do, Brian? I do the research. Where is the best access point for that bomb where I can be the furthest away from it, but I still want to know the results of it. And you're saying, what does an IED have to do with a bank robber or a pedophile? It has everything to do with it.
Yeah.
And if you're an investigator or you're a parent, you should be writing this shit down, because these are gems. And it's not gems because Brian and I are super intelligent. It's gems because in our experiences and in our training, what we found out in all of the research is that everybody follows that pattern: low level of sophistication, high level of organization, and access. And access means that I got to make you lower your boundaries, or I got to find a way in that you haven't anticipated. That alone. Okay. Workplace violence and school shooters. Okay. Where are they going to come in, Brian? They're going to come in the door. How many times have we seen that? Even though they're reinforcing doors, they're, like the new standard, I think, is 6 minutes. And don't hold me to that. It's a thing that I read, that the door has to withstand a complete assault and battery against that door for 6 minutes to be considered safe. Okay. You do that to the door, I'm coming in the window. And you're going, okay, but I done the doors and the windows, and I put up a security gate. All I got to do is steal a car and back that son of a bitch through the cinder
Yeah.
block wall that you're built. So what did we learn with the MRAP, Brian? We can keep making that MRAP bigger.
Yeah.
What did our opponents do? They
Yeah.
built a bigger bomb to create access. Access is the key to all of this, Brian.
No, and that's why we're hitting it so hard with these different examples too, because if I look at it from that standpoint, is that okay, who am I giving, who am I allowing access
Yes.
to here? Who is it? What do I even know about them? Do I want my kids around those people? Should I be around this person? Who am I? And that comes with everything, not just you physically, the information you give. There's certain things. There's a lot of things I don't talk about with people just because I go, I don't really want that person to know that piece of information if they
In
have
that
access.
vein of
Yeah,
of your life,
and
not
and
in all of your life, right?
no, and that's the thing, is it's dependent upon the relationship and what that means to you. But
Yes.
when I start to use things like access and boundaries and use those terms, it helps clarify it too, because then it's not really it's a scientific way of looking at it. So I'm being as objective as possible. I'm not looking at this person and going, oh, but I've known them, and well, they're the pastor at the local church, and they're
Yes.
the people. We create that through fundamental attribution errors. We create these personas of people that are just they make no sense. It's like, well, that person never did. Well, they were they were in the military, and then they were a
Yep.
police officer, and then they're it's like that has nothing to do with what we're talking about. Like
So
what you're putting that, thinking that person's any different
exactly.
than the bum underneath the fucking highway overpass. And it's like,
I
you know what I'm
I
saying?
want to hope that I would be able to pick out the teacher that wants to rape my kid.
Yeah.
I want to be
Yeah, I
able to
want
do that.
to believe
Okay.
I can do that. Sure.
But the problem is that that person is going to be the well camouflaged, nicest, liar that you've ever met. Why? Because to
They have to
ply
be.
my trade for a long time and not getting railed in a prison cell every 14 minutes, okay, I have to be. So what does that mean? That means that we have to take a look at, for example, I want to talk about two things very briefly. One is a public call office. I made a living on public call offices because in the most kinetic Iraq, people had never heard of them. And the terrorists were still getting information out, Brian, and they were sending videos, and everybody was going, how are they doing that? Well, PCO is a public call office. They were going to the local place in Iraq where you would pay somebody for an internet access and sending them. So if you wanted to find a terrorist or a criminal, I could take you right to them. But we didn't know that. We didn't know that they needed access to something else. So guess what? Everybody was operating at the big end of the funnel. All I did is focus them at the tinier end. So if that's true, Brian, that can be said for anything, for solving a problem using a quadratic equation or using math or anything else. And that's what we do, is we do science. So I'll give you one more. Read an article, and the article said, hey, listen, every time you go to the mall, when you're walking through the parking lot, you knock on that van, because that van might contain a kid that's being sex trafficked. Stop for just a second now, and before you show your how ridiculous that remark is. But listen to me, folks, you're falling for other shit too, because I read a thing that said there's $100 bill on a windshield, and what it does is it makes the female stop for a minute, Brian, to get that $100 bill, and while she's fumbling to put it in her wallet, she's going to be kidnapped. Do me a favor, if you're chief of police, look in your agency for the last time that was a tactic. Okay, the people that are doing this, Brian, they're much more highly organized, and they're using the lowest sophisticated methods that can't be tracked.
That's the drugged or razor blades and the Halloween candy or
exactly.
whatever. It's all fucking urban legend bullshit.
But why does it come up all the time?
Because
we're scared, and they know they'll appeal to us.
Yeah, and that's the thing is people are fucking selling tickets to whatever they're selling tickets to, whether that's just clicks or likes or thumbs up, whatever.
And you have to be able to read that early on, or guess what? You're going to click. You're going to like.
The biggest problem with all that junk is that it then it makes it, so I actually understand it even less, because now I'm looking for a fucking I'm looking for the what do you call it? God, I'm like up late last night with the baby. I'm looking for the boogeyman. You know what I mean? At that point, you're just making stuff up, and it's like I don't. Now I'm looking for something that doesn't exist.
You're making stuff up because of the chemical interactions of fear. So the same thing with anger. Think about this. You're mildly angry. We're back at the Denny's. I don't know. I'm hungry. And we've got our egg Hamlet, and we're sitting down, and all of a sudden somebody bumped my chair when they walked by. And then I saw the person walk by, and they looked back. Now, they meant nothing by it, and they looked back because they didn't know that they bumped the chair. And now I'm going, did he just throw me a sign? Is that person looking at me? Because anger came up because I was surprised by the chair, Brian. What's happening is now these chemicals are racing through my system. So what happens next is all important. If I look at that and I start reading only the things that read, right, a confirmation bias, that this person is trying to anger me, then I'm going to stand up and go, hey, man, you just bumped into my chair, and now it's going to be a fight. If I look and I go, hey, my bad, and the guy goes, no, man, I'm really sorry. So de-escalation is a process of understanding me. It has nothing to do with understanding you yet. And then the next thing is understanding the situation we're in. Then it's understanding you. But do we do that? No, because we don't understand that access to you was breached, and that's what caused the first anger. So access is more than a place. Access is a thing. So we tell people the parking lot. Why do we keep bringing up the parking lot? Because the person's got to get to the parking lot to get access to your front door. So if we spend some time and money there, and we do some training there, then we're not going to have a shot spotter in the classroom and figure out who's got the keys so we can go in and save the kids. So why don't we talk about those, Brian? We don't talk about those because somebody's making money booting doors and ramming cars and selling tools.
It's and I think it's just innate in human beings too, to look for technological solutions. That's how we've survived. I mean, that's literally how we've gotten to this point. That's why we constantly innovate, and we constantly want something better that's newer, and we're looking at that, and but when we do, and that's always going to happen, which is fine. It's good. Like that's good for society. That's made lives easier. That's saved people's lives. That
absolutely,
you know what I mean? That's a good thing. But that's something that's innate in humans. It's going to happen, and we keep leaving stuff on the floor that we're not noticing, and we're not taking these simple cues sometimes, or a simple way to look at it, and so therefore we miss it, and it continues to happen.
I
and
agree.
so, when it comes to access and boundaries too, I look at it from, even that's even from a work perspective, like, ah, crap, I want to get in touch with this guy. I think that he might be interested in what we have. Like, let me
Hmm.
look around the periphery. Let me look at their LinkedIn and see who I know that knows them. Let me see and ask around. Hey, we're going down to Texas. Who do I know that knows these folks down here? Hey, can you put me in touch? And the idea is gaining access to the right people through your own connections, for the purposes of, I want to set the groundwork for where we're
Yep.
going. And the reason why I bring up that example is, if you look at that, if you're listening right now, if you look at that, ways you do that in your own life, right? Find some examples of where you're trying to gain access. It's probably for a good reason. I mean, it's not something nefarious.
It's not
It's
always
it's
illegal
just
or
it.
bad,
And
right?
if you look at it from that way, you go, okay, I see. This is about access and what I'm doing. Who's trying to do that to me? Who's trying to do that to my kid? Who's trying to do that to these people over here? It becomes a little bit easier. And then we don't create that boogeyman, and we don't look
Exactly.
at it as a person as, this is the monster living in their mom's basement. It's like, no, it's not. It's the fucking teacher down the street that
You're
has a job
exactly right.
and runs the youth camp. Like, I'm
This is
sorry,
this
like,
is
this is
this
not.
is where we get prostitution wrong. The prostitute, I've never, okay, I was only a cop for 27 years, Brian. I've only been in the industry since I was, basically 17, meaning human behavior, right? But I've never once heard, and folks, if you can correct me, please do your homework and reach out. I've never heard of a prostitute going into a Piggly Wiggly, jumping up and grabbing the microphone and going, "Hey, I'll be your prostitute today. Anybody just line
Yeah,
up." They don't go looking. Okay.
yeah.
They go to an area and allow access, right? Because they lower their
If
boundaries and
someone
their
has seen
standard.
that, just
And you,
send us that address to that Piggly
because
Wiggly.
think about this for a minute though. Okay, they don't have to do that. A drug dealer doesn't
No.
have to do that. We actively seek out those things, right? So when
Yes.
we look at that, we get it wrong. So the same thing. How do you find a sniper? How do you find a hooker? How do you find a gosh damn drug dealer? The idea is it's very simple when you use it. Baseline plus anomaly equals decision, and then you start looking at geographics. Then you start looking at atmospherics. Why, Brian? Because each one of those tools makes it more and more clear of the type of environment
Yeah.
where in which they have to operate. So why would a coach be more likely to molest kids? They're not. A molester becomes a coach because of access.
Yeah.
It's not that all those years later, the Family Guy, where Peter's the umpire on the Little League and looks and goes, "Tommy, you got the best ass on this field." Okay, that never happens. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Doing your son? Okay, we make off-color jokes about those because somewhere in our heart and in our mind, we know that's not how it happens, Brian, but we don't understand the
We don't
process,
understand it.
right?
And
So
well,
once we
that
understand it, the fear will abate. That's the
well,
good thing
well,
about it.
we still do this, right? I still see the same junk out there today, even
I
even
do.
for when you're teaching kids about, drugs and partying and stuff like that. When I was growing up, it's like, someone's going to offer you this and someone's going to do that and someone's going to come. You have this image of this, like,
Yep.
shady looking guy pulling up in a vehicle, like, hey kids, want some beers and some pot or something. It was like, no, it's your friend who's like, dude, you want to get high and drunk? And you're like, I mean, like,
Exactly.
this is not,
Yep.
it's not how
And
that
the first
works.
time, the first
So
time you're
you're
so
like, all
scared, you
right.
go, no. You get what I'm trying to say? And the
So
second time, it's like that
y-
kid Damone in Fast Times from Ridgemont High.
yeah,
You go,
yeah.
yeah, okay, all right, it's a
Hey,
beer. What's a
Spicoli.
beer?
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. No, no, you got to go for Damone before you go for
Oh yeah, that's
Spicoli.
right. Yeah,
That's how
yeah,
it
yeah,
starts. Damone is the
yeah.
gateway drug,
Yeah.
right?
So, that's another thing. It's like, oh, there's a gateway drugs, other things. Like, that's not a real thing. Like, there's no, it's not, one's not gonna all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, I want it. No, you might be more likely to become an addict or something.
Right.
You might have that genetic makeup. You might have these, but we look at it so incorrectly. And and all it does is just it makes it more difficult to see and identify those people.
Yeah.
And that's why I hate all those stories. Yeah, you saw the video, or the one video, the guy, like, go through a parking lot and knock on vans to see if there's like kidnapped children. And they're like, what the
Right. And
fuck are
there
you
were
talking about?
358 reposts and everybody that's
Like,
looking at it
what are you
because you
talking
want to
about?
do the right thing. Look,
You're,
why do
you go,
people run?
we,
Why do people run from you on foot when you're a cop? because they do not want to grant you access.
Yeah.
Okay. They are saying that I have
They're
a
trying to deny you
boundary for my
access.
belongings in
Yeah.
my body. Okay. Why do people flee? Well, the number one reason that people flee, it
Because they're
goes
being
from like
chased.
stolen cars. You're exactly right. Stolen cars to DUI to DWS second. You could make a scientific list of those things, but none of those matter as much as the fact that I am denying you access to me. So when you start thinking of it that way, what I like, Brian, is the lowest and least objectionable answer, lowest common denominator, least objectionable conclusion that we can draw from the information that we're given. That helps us set a scientific basis for what we're going to do next. We talk about it all the time with ML and MD COA. Most likely course of action, most dangerous course of action. If I walk up on this car, Brian, and the guy's got his license and registration ready and the windows down and vehicles in park, and he's pulled off the road appropriately, and he goes, look, I know I was speeding. I really can't use another ticket for my insurance. You're most likely going to have this type of situation. If it comes up, what's this about? This is bullshit. My window's half up. I haven't turned my radio down. It's likely going to turn into a shit sandwich, and we call it an MD COA. So why wouldn't I look for that in my own kid or neighborhood if we're looking for a sniper or a drug dealer? Or again, why prostitution is plying its trade. The idea is if my kid becomes more distant, if my family member starts tuning out to the other thing that's around, it's different from my baseline, and it's going to be a suicide, or they're getting molested, or guess what, they're just going to try a new hair color and they want to spring it on you, and it's going to be a surprise. But it means that something is coming. Yeah. And I love your point that it's not always criminal. Then why do we have podcasts about it? Because that's all we can do. Because if we had podcasts about sunny, rosy shit all the time and platitudes and flowers, you wouldn't tune in all the time. Okay. So we've got to be talking about those things that impact your life adversely, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Or you're not going to want to tune in.
And the way, because you brought up, like, when we talk about this stuff, we always bring in the access, organization, sophistication, and what the reason why, again, we use those terms is for sense making. Right? How do I make sense out of a situation that, well, I've never, maybe I've seen it before. Maybe I've read a story about it. Maybe I watched a movie, or I saw something on A&E and there's some true crime documentary on it, but like that's not real to you, and they sensationalize that stuff. Like it's very simple sometimes.
Oh,
and the
man.
more simple it is, the more effective that person is at being a predator, because they keep things simple at that high organization level. They don't rely on a lot of extraneous shit. They don't rely on a lot of things that could go well, and it could go wrong. There's too many potentials. It's like
or it could lead back to them. There's so many. You're exactly right.
And so when you look for highly organized people, okay, well, you'll see that. I see that in my neighbor when I went to borrow some of his tools, and you go in his garage and everything has an exact spot on a pegboard. All the screws are in, every single thing is neat and covered in line, because they work with tools. They rely on that. So guess what? I expect a higher level of organization. If I see shit thrown all over the place, right, and there's stuff's everywhere, is that the guy I want, working on my sink or my electrical or my this? It's like, maybe not. Now, if that person's an artist making paintings or something, okay, who knows? Maybe there's going to be crap everywhere. Maybe that's how they get inspiration, and their mind's cluttered and they get it out through on the canvas, right? There's different types of personality types you can see, but when I identify those higher levels of organization, it piques my interest, but it also piques my interest in a good way. I want to hire the person that's organized, that's going to be there on time.
You're exactly right. But Brian, what you keep doing every time you chime in, you come with a very simplistic way of looking at the situation.
I'm a simple human.
Right? Yeah, but so am I. And I love that about you, because what I read yesterday, and it fell right into my chasing TTPs file, because if you chase TTPs, you're going to be busy all your life and you're never going to catch a bad guy.
Yeah.
The person was talking about poisoning, and they were saying, hey, in all of the stuff that you do, because this guy in China poisoned a bunch of kids, one died, they executed him in record time. I mean, in China, you don't mess around for very long, right? Yeah. But the idea was that it's just like the articles that I've seen about the stabbing. Well, hey, if a person's going to kill, they're going to kill. It doesn't matter about the gun. The idea is what you're doing is you're saying, I have to have a separate file folder for every situation. Strangulation has to have a completely sexual strangulation, has the subset and this and that. What we look at is the offender and the situation. So the baseline dictates the type of person that I need to stop in the parking lot. And it's likely that guy dragging that bag full of guns backwards. And you're going, yeah, but you're oversimplifying. No, life
No.
is oversimplified.
Yeah.
You're overcomplicating it. What
Well,
you're doing is you're taking a look at a TTP and saying we have to have a complete workup for our emergency services protocol for this specific event. Now, yeah, you need Narcan, or you need the number to poison control, and you need to know not to go up at a traffic accident because you can get electric shock. But Brian, what we're talking there is we're talking big picture. There's a big architecture at work in the life, and it's some very simple gifts that we've been given. Because if everything in our life was nuanced and we always had to learn by trying something, there'd be corpses in the street every day.
Yeah.
You see? So there has to be some big overarching rules that we follow. And two of those that are both sides of the same coin are access and boundaries. And so if we can specialize in those, I don't care what you do. I don't care whether you're a teacher or you're a model manufacturer, or you work on people's hair and nails. The idea is that if you understand those things, if you understand the boundaries and the need for them and when to let them down, okay, because if you never let your boundaries down, you're never going to have kids.
Yeah,
you get what I'm saying? I mean,
you can't.
there's certain, life truths out there, right?
And probably not a very fulfilling life, but
yep, exactly.
But no, and again, this goes down to kind of look at it from almost a physiological or biological standpoint.
Yep.
The color red creates certain physiological reactions in my primitive brain without me realizing it. Why?
Yes.
Because biology said, okay, when you see red, well, blood is red, and blood is supposed to be inside the body, not outside the body. So that could be a danger sign. But when I couple that with certain other things, like if I put red and yellow together, well, that has a certain physiological effect on me too. I'm getting primitive signals,
hungry.
but I'm also getting hungry, which is why I have so
Exactly.
many fast food places. They're always have red or yellow in there. I mean, look at McDonald's, In-N-Out, all those different places. And so what we're saying is you look for those cues or those simple things that you find in all places and understand, okay, this is going to be present or cause a certain reaction, or maybe something as a tool that people use to gain access. So wherever I see that tool, a key is a perfect example. A key gives you access. So if I don't have a key, maybe I have to make a key, right? Certain people are allowed certain keys into certain areas of your home or your building, your office, wherever you go to school, those type of things. It's like, okay, so who am I giving a key to, in a sense, and allowing access? And
what you just did is you set up an entire industry. So if I want to overcome your key, I buy a big pair of Doc Marten boots and I boot the door. But if you buy a 3-inch screw instead of the 1.5-inch screw for your doorbell, it'll hold that back, right? So what we're doing, Brian, is now you've just hit on the scientific method. That's exactly how these things work. You move, and then the wave on this side creates a need, and then I build to bridge that gap. But that's not chasing TTPs. What that is understanding the likelihood of what's going to occur next. If I can predict that, prediction is a pattern plus the analysis of the pattern. Yeah. I mean, that's
adaptation. That's evolution. So, I mean, that's what
let me say it this way. Okay. So take grandpa or grandma and place them face up on a white sheet and let them vacillate there for an hour. Then roll them over on the other side of the white sheet for an hour. Now I want you to do the same thing with your 1978 Chevy Malibu. Okay. If you've got shit that's leaking out, there's something wrong with the vehicle. And if you sample the shit that leaked out, okay, you'll be able to tell exactly where the problem is. So you can either choose to fix your engine when the engine light comes on, or you can put a Band-Aid on it. And that's what we're talking about here, right?
I didn't know where you were going with that.
Yeah, but hey, I know you're going to try it now. I know you're going to try it with your old man,
Oh God, that's disgusting.
Yeah, but it works, yeah? So in the simplest form of things, the simplest answer, I'm saying that when we take a look at this, look, in any segment of society, like they say there's a 10%, I read this, I can't remember when it was, probably 6 months ago. They said there's a 10% chance that your kid is going to be sexually molested by a teacher during their time in school, from the time to kindergarten till the time that they graduate. 10% is a huge number. And if that's actually true, what are we doing wrong here? There's no question why we have school shootings.
Definitely.
But let's go
you're saying
back.
1 out of every 10 kids is
Come on.
that this is.
Let's go back to what you said about who the most likely offender is. When it's a homicide, who's the most likely offender?
Someone they
The
know.
person that's in a relationship with
Yep.
them. Yeah. Okay. If it's somebody that's going to molest you, who is going to be? Most likely a family member, because
Yep.
they've already been given an amount of access. Now,
Mhm.
why do we say the swimsuit areas are your private thing and only your parents, you, and the doctor can touch them? Because we need to set boundaries. Go simple. You guys spend so much time on this social media, and all you do is make the 15 rules to make
Oh God.
this thing. Dude, I tune out at 2. If you
Yeah.
haven't caught me by 1 or 2, I'm not going to listen. So what we're saying on the podcast, I think what we're saying, Brian, because you've had very little sleep, and I don't know if we're still on the podcast, but the idea is what I think we're saying here, Brian, is don't make it bigger than it is. It's probably simpler than you think. And if you take a look at the most basic root causes, there's probably 2 or 3 things that you could see that would set a pattern. 3 is always better. 5 is even better. And from that pattern, you can analyze ML and MD and come up, is it a situation where I need to restrict access and create boundaries? Do I need to lower my boundaries with my kids so they'll talk to me? Do
Yeah.
I need to take the lock off of their door, and go in the room and check their phone? You talk about that with the insurgent all the time. This
Yeah.
is a function of access and boundaries. And you know what? You got to feel very open going in and checking your daughter's phone. Max has a phone, folks, but he's just learning to text now because he's only 4 weeks old. But no, but seriously, right? When you're talking about that, that's what this is. It's a function of how far you will go to find out what quotients, what variables are important in the pattern to analysis.
Well, and that's what we talk about from, threat mitigation. I know a lot of people always ask us questions about like kind of
Yep.
like some like personal safety stuff, and then what people are calling situational awareness. We don't really get into that stuff because one, people are usually teaching TT tactics, techniques, and procedures or something. It's like, great, if that works for you and you want to carry some weapon or mace or whatever, you want to do that, and you want to have this protocol that you go through everywhere you go. Hey man, if it works for you, awesome. Like I just, but I look at it from this like, okay, well, how do I deny someone access to me and my family
Precisely.
if I don't want them? It's very simple. Okay, what are some then, because what you do there is you then can be creative, or you can use what you have in that location at that given time at that given place, and that's the tool versus well, I always carry a slapjack on me. It's like, okay, but no, you don't. And you're going to forget it one day. And if that's all you're thinking about, I'm thinking about it cognitively. How do I deny someone access right now while I'm filling up with gas? What can I do right now in this environment? Then the next place I go, how do I deny someone access to my family when we're sitting here at this,
to my
outdoor
wallet,
park or whatever,
to my computer,
it's
to
the
my
same
car.
thing.
Exactly.
You keep looking at these
Spot on.
tools, you keep looking at, the next thing you have to buy. It's like, well, then you're always going to be behind the curve. You're always looking for some tactic, technique, or procedure. And that's generally unnecessary, right? People did that stuff before those things were invented. People were able to survive those situations. So maybe, just maybe, you might be able to too, and you don't have to go buy something and learn how to use it. I mean, we're talking about very low calorie, low risk, high return, right? That's the point of having this sort of cognitive framework and a lexicon on which to describe it, right? It makes the picture more clear, right? That goes back to your phoraptor, Greg.
You're exactly right.
And it allows me to not just think of it as one thing that I need to have on me at all times. You know what I mean? Like, yes, I still I carry the door wedge and the tournament on me all the time when I travel because it's such a low calorie thing.
Exactly. And it's smart, man.
High return that if you ever need it, it's high return, and it doesn't take up much space in my bag. But I don't rely on that, right? We build in access and denial and boundaries into everything that you do. I mean, that's the perfect words. Like, we always have our own table set up when we're teaching a course that goes in between us and the students over at wherever
because we need that room,
location
buddy.
we want, because that's a boundary. You don't get to come behind this desk, right? We establish that right up front. Why? Because we build it into everything that we do. So I'm not caught behind the curve. And when you look at it like this way, it just becomes a little bit more universal and easy to adopt on a daily basis.
On a daily basis. It's a gem. It's something you can give your kids. You can give your wife or significant other before they go out to work or to panhandle, whatever it is that they do. So Here's the thing. I've been more
Yeah,
open
she's
lately.
got to earn.
Okay,
Let's go, kiddo.
exactly. Somebody's got to make
Mortgage
our
ain't
money.
paying itself.
Wait till
So,
Max can hold a pan, right? And
yeah.
we'll get him the handle. Let me talk about an upcoming episode. Folks, we've got an upcoming episode, and Brian and I are still doing the time and the research and the background on it because we want to give the right answers to you. And we're going to be talking about trafficking, and we're going to go straight to the world leading experts on it to make sure that we get you the right answers. While we're doing that, let's talk about the problem. A problem has to have a bunch of hands in it to remain a problem. And I'll give you an example. And if you're a kid, tune out right now. And if you're adult, stay on. Spoiler alert, there is no Santa Claus, okay?
Wait,
How
what?
do we create the myth? I know. Have another shot of bourbon. Bourbon solves so many ills. There is no Santa Claus. So how do so many kids learn to believe it for so long? And how come some become crushed? Because so many people play along willingly, unwittingly. They
Society
play
does.
along
Yeah,
in
absolutely.
song and
Yeah.
in poems and in everything else because it's cool. Well, I'll tell you right now, for a segment of society, trafficking is cool because it's making them a lot of money and giving them access to a way to lower boundaries. And because there's a phalanx, a guarded chain link and chain mail of those folks, and they use the simplest weapon possible, secrecy. And this whole thing manifests itself into a tough nut to crack. So all problems are like that. And I'm not saying to diminish your problem, but suicide is like that. Suicide is a battle of wills with somebody that remains silent on something. Maybe they're screaming to you, but you're not reading that frequency. And obesity and self-mutilation and all of these things, when you take it down to pattern recognition, the next part always has to be the analysis. And that's not what we're that good at, Brian. That's why OSINT is such a big thing now, because we've had to take a giant jump backwards to find out that all of this stuff is immediately available anyway, right?
Yeah.
So what I'm saying to you folks is that Brian and I consistently try to give you a drop on the tongue that's going to make you smarter, stronger, faster, harder to kill. But you got to do part of it. You can't just listen to an episode and go out there and go, I am cured, I am healed. What you got to do is you got to look for those patterns every day. Brian said it, simple, low-calorie intervention every day that makes me a little harder to access, that makes my boundaries a little stronger.
Well,
that's what we're talking about.
And you're also this is how we sort of sift through things, but the problem always is too is starting with good information, and that's the biggest problem right now.
Being intentional and starting with good information.
Good information. You know, I mean,
I totally agree.
It's, you know, why dig into and see how all of this stuff really works? Because when I can just watch this 2-minute black and white Instagram video of someone talking in a very strange voice, right? It's like, what the fuck is this shit? Like, this is junk. Like,
how many junky ones do I send you? Jesus, I don't know how many thousands you go through a day, because every once in a while I'll find one that's so stupid, I'll send it to you and you go, yeah, that's been going around for a month now or whatever. Yeah. Because it's still surprising to me that stuff garners the hits and the likes. Are we that shallow? Is that what it is?
Well, it's I mean, we can that's a whole nother podcast episode, but that plays into just our emotional content, and that once you got someone roped in with that, then you got them. That's it. I don't need to. If I get you emotional about something, I get you fighting, I get you arguing about something. That's it. I got
or loving. Yeah. The monkey on a tricycle. You know what I'm saying? That little pig holding the pinwheel. Have you ever seen that one? Whee! You know, I'm hooked. I can't stop. I don't even care what the product is. I have no idea what the product is, but I'll watch it.
That is true, because you get the really bad information ones, but then the same ones that go viral are like the adorable or funny cat video of it doing something. I mean, because that plays our emotions. People go, oh, I love that.
I have the cure for cancer. 3 likes. Okay. The cat falling, you know, wearing a pair of your shoes.
The cat.
That's 2 billion views.
Cat slowly pushing your drink off the ledge till it falls on the ground. God. 1 million people. Yeah, I love that. So,
yeah, good point. I think we just wrote another episode.
Yeah, that's I don't know though. Anytime I have those conversations with people, they really take it the wrong way. So partly that. But
why do you get defensive?
Exactly. Because everyone goes, well, you're saying. I'm like, no, that's not what I said. That's not what I said at all.
But no, and nobody likes to be exposed. Why? Because you have your boundaries up on what? On your opinion. Opinion-based testimony is the worst. Eyewitness testimony is the worst. But your boundaries are probably higher there, and you probably think you're a lot smarter than you are. I know I do. You know what I'm
Well, so
saying?
much,
So
so much of
there's
this
nothing
stuff,
wrong with
so much of this stuff too
understanding that,
is just basic mimicry. People don't even realize what they're putting out there because they're just
right?
mimicking what everyone else is doing, which is actually a good thing, meaning that social mimicry means people are communicating. Yes, I take cues from you. Oh, I'm doing the same thing. And now you're just but you're throwing shit out there
Yep.
that you're like, you don't even know what you're doing anymore. You're not even paying
Brian,
attention.
we have a very good friend that we've known for a long time that every message they send is in bold size 26 font, no
Oh,
matter what
Jesus.
method,
Yeah.
and saying, please
Oh, I've been
forward
meaning
this
to
to
ask you about him
everybody you
because he
know.
dropped off
Yeah.
the net for a while, or I might not be getting him
It's
anymore.
I
So
think that's what it is. I think that our the idea is that we've raised our standards on how much crap that we'll accept and ingest, only because the net's getting flooded. And I'll tell
yeah,
you this, folks, we'll answer every interrogatory, every question that you send, every
we do.
comment that you make. We answer every single one. But if every one of your message starts off in red, Helvetica size 26, that everybody needs to know this, please tell everyone. And it has 4
Why?
exclamation points at
Why
the
are
end
you
of it.
yelling at me in your email? That's what I
Even
was.
even your email is angry, you know. So no, I agree with you.
All
And
right,
we
so
love that person. We just want that person to do better.
yeah,
It's all about the
I
patterns,
want them to
baby.
find some balance in their life.
Exactly, any balance.
But so we talk about a lot with access
Yeah.
and boundaries and how criminals, terrorists, insurgents will create access if they don't have it, and to try to use these as sort of lenses. You know, is
Yep.
this person same thing? It just is this person trying to gain access to me? If so, why? Meaning what else should it? Then it's just the
Exactly.
MLMD co. Are they doing it to victimize me? Or are they doing it because they came up to me to ask me for help because they're
Yep.
lost? Right?
So
You know,
people want their say.
yeah,
People want their way. That's fine. People want their say and their way. That's a problem. A
yeah,
person wants access. They're first denied. They continue to try to get access. Well, guess what? Now we have a problem. Houston,
yeah.
we have a problem because they're demonstrating intent. You're exactly right. So Brian, I could take a couple of those damn coupon cards, not coupon, what do they call it? Recipe cards. My mom used to have them all the time, and my
Yeah,
mom was the
same. My mom.
worst
Yeah,
cook in
yeah.
the world. Just
Oh
so you
God.
know, I'm so sorry. It's like, I have nude level of frog. I think she was a witch, but the idea is that if you have that, you could put simply 2 or 3 of those together with some common things and stick them in your visor. And in the morning, while you're warming up your car because it's 32 below in Gunnison, you could take them out and say, hey, people want their way, people want their say, but generally they don't want both. Or is this person acting out or acting up? Because it's acting up, it's okay. But acting out is probably a bad thing. Brian, those simple life rules will help me be smarter and safer. And again, a low calorie intervention. I could have them in the visor of my police car. I could have them duct taped to my mirror. Remember when we were in Saudi Arabia and at, I won't say the place or who we were with that time, but you remember the mirror? And the mirror was all the things to make sure that when you took a look in the mirror before you walked out the room, you remembered those. And what did we do? We just had the different colored index cards with magic marker and a little bit of tape. That's how you can change a life a little at a time, a little each day. So
Yeah.
simple.
No, and that's why we break it down this way, and it's not an oversimplification. I mean, it really isn't. If you look at it from sort of this
It's a
multi-domain approach,
simplification.
yeah, but
It's a
that's
simplified approach, but it's not oversimplified.
no, and it allows a better understanding of no matter what it is. You know what I
I
mean?
agree.
So just using some of those terms, that's why we talk about it on here. So I think that's a good place to end on. There's kind of a lot in there. I
Lot
always
to unpack, I
ask
think.
I always ask people, to reach out with your questions, leftofgreg@gmail.com. And we'll like I said, we'll answer it. If it's something bigger in depth, that's kind of for our Patreon folks. We always get on there with them. And we have that side to kind of deep dive or get specific cases, or if someone doesn't want to bring it up on air, we have
Yeah, we're
all those
smart enough to be
conversations. Yeah,
non-attribution.
yeah.
Exactly.
We're not, if you ask us
Exactly.
not to share it, we're not going to share it, or only
With your
with other
photo,
certain people. Yeah.
unless
We're
you
not
pay
gonna
us.
wait, you pay oh yeah.
Unless you pay us not to.
You gonna go on that
Yeah.
TV show, Greg?
Why not?
So or
Holy crap.
you pay them to go on?
Yeah, that was a great one.
What a
And I
great
got
call.
and I got roped in because my dear friend Brian, No, so the guy knew the website. The guy knew everything
Well,
about
he was a
Brian and I.
legit
Loved the
thing. That
show,
was a
and he
thing. That
is a
was a thing.
legit guy,
That's
and he
not
is
a
a
made up
legit producer. And
show.
so he
Yeah.
talks about the episode, and he talks about how much he wants Brian and I on, and what part of
Yeah.
it he wants us to talk about. And then he hits me with the he, and the he is, yeah, and all you got to do is pay us $54,000 for 3 minutes
Like, wait a
of
minute.
exposure.
I pay you to go on TV? I thought those people
Exactly.
on TV get paid to be
It's
on
the John
TV.
Candy and Stripes. No, see, if we were in
It's
Germany, I'd have to make your bed.
it's
Oh my
it's a
God.
good we may work that into to an episode somehow, but it is a good thing for people to know that when they look at some certain experts or whatever on TV for some
Nope.
of those shows, they may have paid to be in that spot on
Largely
that show. So
a bunch of money.
so that's always
Uh,
good to know. But all right, well, that's all I got. Anything else for today, Greg?
no, but if I had 54 grand, I wouldn't spend it on that. I mean, that's like
No.
Shelly and I's retirement account times 10. You know what I'm saying? It's like, oh my God, I wish I knew what 50,000 looked like.
Yeah.
I'm so cheap.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in, and don't forget that training changes behavior.